At Father's Day fishing trip, my dad said, "You're not part of this family." So I shut down his entire life overnight. And then it was just after 7 on a humid Sunday morning in Helena when I realized something was off. And not just the usual kind of off that comes from waking up alone with your phone lighting up only from junk emails and discount grocery coupons. It was Father's Day, and I hadn't expected a parade or some forced brunch, but I figured there'd at least be the usual barrage of texts from the family group chat. Memes about dads and lawn mowers, guilt from mom about calling dad before noon, maybe a dumb selfie of my brother Clay's kids holding up burnt pancakes. But my screen was completely blank. Not even a single message from my mother, who normally wakes up earlier than the sun just to remind me that I should be a better son. I thought maybe they'd just gotten busy. It happens. Maybe they were doing something together and forgot to loop me in. Wouldn't be the first time they assumed I couldn't make it or wasn't interested. So I scroll like normal, just killing time with one eye on a coffee maker, and I see my cousin Davis's news story pop up on his feed. I tap through out of habit, not expecting anything interesting, until suddenly there's this photo, blurry as hell, crooked, but immediately I can see it. They're all there, standing on the dock at Lost Wolf Lake, the same spot we went to every summer as kids, the one with the rusted grill and the crooked shed that always smelled like worms and gasoline. Front and center is my dad, Roy, looking way too happy for someone who hasn't returned my calls in 2 weeks, holding up a fish the size of a toddler, beaming like he just got elected mayor. Clay's right beside him, arm around his oldest boy, both of them wearing those awful neon hats mom always buys on clearance. Behind them, I spot my Uncle James, even his twins, and that one cousin I haven't talked to since he tried to sell me supplements. So this isn't just a casual fishing trip. This is a full-blown family outing, the kind you'd think someone might have at least mentioned to me in passing, especially considering I was literally in my parents' house the week before setting up their new router, because Dad can't tell the difference between Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I double-check my text just in case I somehow missed a message, maybe a forgotten invite buried in a thread. Nothing. I scroll through the old group chat to see if maybe they plan it there, and I just wasn't paying attention, but it's dead. Silent since last Wednesday, when Mom sent a chain prayer and Clay liked it with a thumbs up. So now I'm sitting in my kitchen with my half-warm coffee, trying to figure out if this is just an oversight or something else entirely. I text Clay a simple "y'all at the lake?" No puntuación, no guide. He reads it and doesn't reply. After a few minutes, I call my dad directly because I'm not in the mood to play passive-aggressive charades with my own family. He picks up on the second ring, sounds annoyed like I interrupted something sacred. I ask him if he's having a good time, just to see where this is going, and he says, "Yeah, Dylan, we're out at Echo Ridge." You know how we do on Father's Day. There's no apology in his voice, no attempt to soften the blow. I wait a beat, then ask plainly why nobody thought to invite me, and he goes quiet, like he didn't expect me to actually say it out loud. Then he says, without hesitation, "This one's just for the family, the ones who show up for things that matter." It hits me weird. I laugh, thinking maybe he's joking, trying to mess with me like he sometimes does when he's had too many beers. But he doesn't laugh. I ask him what that means, and he says, "You're not part of this the way Clay and the boys are. They're carrying the name. They're part of the line." I don't even know what the hell that means. I say, "So what am I?" And he replies, flat and cold, "You're a disappointment." I don't even tell people you're mine anymore. And that's when the floor drops out. I don't even remember what I said next, or if I said anything at all. I heard someone yell something in the background about beer, maybe a fish flopping, and then I asked if Mom was there. He says yes, and like magic, she's suddenly on the line with that exasperated tone she always uses when she wants me to stop talking. "Dylan," she says, like I'm a problem she's been trying to solve for years. "Don't start something today. Let them enjoy the day. Don't drag everyone down just because you feel left out." I ask if she seriously believes I'm the one creating drama by noticing I wasn't invited to my own family celebration. She sighs, long and tired, then says, "Can you just let it be, please?" So I say, "Understood." Nothing more. I don't yell. I don't cry. I just hang up, quietly. I put my phone down hard enough to make the mug on the counter rattle. Then I walk out to the back steps and sit there for what must have been an hour, not doing anything, not thinking anything useful. I quit smoking last year, so I don't light anything, though I wanted to. I just sit there and try to understand how I ended up being treated like an outsider in my own family. Like I'm some neighbor's kid they're too polite to kick out of the group chat. It wasn't just this one thing. That's the part that really gets under your skin. The realization that this wasn't a one-off mistake, but the natural conclusion of years of being the one who shows up for the boring stuff, the one who helps without being asked, who fixes things quietly and leaves before anyone notices. They never forgot me. They just stopped bothering to pretend I mattered. My birthday last year, they sent a group text, and that was it. When my car battery died, Dad told me to call a tow. When Clay's truck wouldn't start, Roy drove out at night during a snowstorm and acted like it was no big deal. That night, I went inside, took the photos of them off the fridge, and deleted the contact from my phone. I didn't scream. I didn't write some dramatic goodbye. I just removed myself from their orbit quietly like a technician pulling a plug on a server nobody realized was still running. After the call that Sunday, I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't rage post or send a manifesto. I just disappeared. I muted the family group chat, blocked my dad's number, removed my brother's contact entirely, and deleted every thread where I'd ever been the one trying to keep conversations alive. That night, I fell asleep with my phone face down and the blinds pulled shut, and for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for an early morning call about some tech issue or money problem that magically became my responsibility. But by the time Monday morning rolled around, I had a voicemail from Clay, short and fake casual, something like, "Hey man, call me when you're free, nothing urgent." I ignored it, obviously. 2 hours later, I got a text from my mom that just said, "Your dad's TV is frozen again. Can you fix it today? No apology. No acknowledgement." Just another request, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't been told I didn't count as family the day before. I didn't even respond. Just left it there, unread. Honestly, it was the first small taste of revenge, and it didn't feel great, but it felt right. Tuesday morning, the group chat lights up again. I hadn't left the thread, just muted it. I wanted to watch how long it would take for them to realize something was different. The messages came fast. First from Mom, saying, "Can you stop ignoring everyone? This is getting childish." Then Clay jumped in with his usual emotionally stunted nonsense. "Bro, quit making things weird. You always turn everything into a problem." I didn't reply to any of it, and that seemed to get under their skin faster than any argument ever could. So I went about my day like nothing was happening. Got groceries, took out the trash, vacuumed the hallway, watched a few episodes of a dumb series I'd already seen twice. Every couple of hours, I'd glance at my phone and see another preview pop up, another failed attempt to drag me back into the system. They all thought I was too scared to leave. Still nothing from Roy, though. That wasn't surprising. He always waited until someone else softened the blow before swooping in like he was the reasonable one, when really, he just liked making everyone else do his cleanup. By Wednesday, I started thinking bigger. For years, I'd been the one quietly managing all their boring digital crap. The electric account, the water, the mobile lines, even Roy's side business profile and invoice system. He's never been good with tech, and somehow that meant I inherited it all, like some secondhand obligation nobody asked me to take, but everyone expected me to handle. I didn't get paid. I didn't even get a thank you. It was just, "Dylan, you're good with this stuff, fix it." So I logged into the accounts one by one. Started with the electric bill. My card had been on the account for almost 5 years. I removed it, took myself off as an authorized user, and sent a short email to the provider asking them to shift the account to Roy's name. No emotion, no drama, just facts. Then I did the same with the water, then the internet, then the mobile plan. Finally, I opened the login for his bait shop's payment gateway, removed my number as the contact, and changed the password recovery email to one I knew he couldn't remember. Then I sent one final text to Clay. "You and Dad are in charge of your own services now. I'm done." That was it. No greeting, no emoji, no sugarcoating. The next day it began. First, Clay left me a voicemail where he tried to sound calm, but you could hear the cracks in his voice. He said I was blowing things out of proportion and that I was stressing Dad out. Said Roy was too old for this kind of mess. I didn't reply. A few hours later, Mom tried again. This time her voice was trembling, half crying, half angry. She accused me of being cruel, of making the family suffer just to make a point. I felt a flicker of guilt, but it faded fast when I remembered Roy telling me he didn't claim me as his son anymore. By Thursday evening, Roy finally called. Didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. Just launched into a tired rant about how I was acting like a child, how I always did this, making things harder than they had to be, hurting people who loved me. I let him talk for a while before I calmly said, "You told me I'm not part of the family. So why would I do family chores?" He went silent, then tried to backpedal, said I took it the wrong way, that he didn't mean it like that. I cut him off and told him to get his name on the bills or lose the services. Then I hung up. Friday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. It was Roy, using someone else's phone because his line had already been shut down from the plan transfer. He was furious, said I destroyed everything he built. I deleted the message without replying. That weekend, my cousin from Davis's fishing photo texted me asking what was going on. I didn't give him a speech. I just sent him screenshots of the text Roy and Mom sent me. I wanted him to see exactly how things went down. No spin, no dramatic retelling. Just the facts. I wasn't getting pulled into another full family pity spiral, just so they could all pretend I'd overreacted again. Then Sunday hit again. 1 full week since the fishing trip that kicked off all of this, and the entire illusion finally started to crack. Clay's wife Rita texted me, all in caps. "Why is the internet off? Dad is losing his mind." I replied, "Call the provider." Not my job. Then muted her number too. Later that afternoon, I heard a knock. I opened the door to find my mom standing there, holding a grocery bag like she just popped by for coffee, like she hadn't ghosted me from a family holiday. Before I could say anything, she tried to walk past me into the kitchen like she used to. I blocked her gently but firmly and told her she couldn't just walk in anymore. She frowned like I'd betrayed some sacred law of motherhood and pushed past me anyway. She didn't ask to sit. She opened the fridge, stared for a second, then shut it hard and turned on me like I'd just thrown her out her own house. She told me I was breaking the family, that I was being cold and vindictive. I asked her if she wanted a drink just to see what she'd do. She slapped my hand away like I'd insulted her. I told her she needed to leave, and she finally did, but not before slamming the front door hard enough to shake the glass. After she left, I checked my phone and saw Rita had posted one of those indirect, passive-aggressive memes about how some people only show up when they want something. I actually laughed out loud. Then Clay texted again, this time accusing me of hurting his son because my nephew had asked to play our usual Sunday game and I hadn't replied. I didn't answer that one either. Not because I don't care, but because I'm not about to get emotionally baited through a 10-year-old. They wanted a family without me. Fine, let them live with that. Let them learn how much they depended on the person they never respected. By Wednesday night, I was eating leftover noodles over the sink when the pounding started, full force, angry, not the kind of knock you can ignore and pretend it's a package drop. I checked the peephole, and of course it was Clay, standing there in his work boots, fists clenched, eyes already narrowed like he'd come here, looking for a fight instead of conversation. I stood there debating whether to open the door or just let him wear himself out, but the banging didn't stop, and the last thing I needed was a neighbor filing a complaint. So I cracked the door just enough to see him properly, bracing my arm against it before he could do anything stupid. He didn't waste time with greetings. "You need to grow up," he snapped, pushing the door with his shoulder like he was going to force his way inside if I didn't move. "This is beyond childish now. You're messing everything up for Dad, and he's not doing well." I held the door firm and told him to step back, and he actually tried to shove past me again, more forceful this time. That was it. I shoved him hard enough to make him stumble off the porch, told him if he ever pulled that again, I call the cops, brother or not. He cursed under his breath, called me a loser, and stomped back to his car like a cartoon villain, slapping the railing on his way out like that made him the winner of whatever imaginary contest he thought we were having. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with more missed calls from Mom. Her voicemails were a mess of crying and rage, her voice wobbling between, "You're hurting this family," and "Why are you doing this to us?" Like I was some petty tyrant throwing tantrums instead of just refusing to be their free IT department. At one point, she said Dad hadn't eaten in 2 days and was barely talking, and I'll be honest, that gave me a pause for about 10 seconds before I remembered the man who told me I wasn't really his son. By Friday morning, Roy himself cornered me at the grocery store, catching me by the freezer aisle while I was just trying to grab a bag of hash browns. He looked tired, like actually aged in the past week, like whatever control he thought he had was finally unraveling. Without even a hello, he launched straight into it, said I was being cruel, said I knew how much he depended on me, and that I had no right to leave them hanging like this. I let him talk until he ran out of steam, and then I told him, point blank, that I'd let it go the second he told me I wasn't family. He blinked like he didn't know what I was referring to, tried to play dumb like I'd twisted his words or misunderstood the context. I reminded him exactly what he said, and he still tried to spin it like I was taking it out of proportion. "Don't you think you're overreacting?" he asked, like I hadn't spent 33 years being treated like the backup plan for every damn thing. "Either I'm family or I'm not," I said. "If I'm not, then don't expect me to clean up your mess." He clenched his jaw, slammed his cart into the frozen section door, and stormed off without another word, leaving behind a half-melted bag of peas. That weekend, things escalated fast. I started getting messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. My Uncle Travis, my cousin Brandon, even Clay's wife Rita, who sent a short message asking, "What did you do?" followed by Caleb's losing it. "Your dad's a wreck." I sent her nothing back, not even a period. A few hours later, she followed up with a multi-paragraph guilt trip about how family is complicated and everyone's hurting. I didn't even read the whole thing. Just closed the thread and turned off notifications. The group chat, which I had muted again after that one message about responsibility, suddenly exploded with activity. Mom started by saying I was hurting people who cared about me. Clay followed up with "Stop acting like a victim. You're punishing the whole family for one bad moment." And finally, Roy chimed in with a single bitter enough. "Come home and fix it." That was his solution. Pretend none of this happened, then drag me back in like I was a tool that had rolled under the couch. I posted one message and then remuted the whole thing. "If I'm not family, stop asking me to do family work." Sunday morning, I got a call from one of Roy's old bait shop clients, saying he couldn't reach Roy and needed to update a bulk order. I told him Roy's the contact now and hung up. Within an hour, Roy called from a different number and left 4 voicemails. He was absolutely seething. "You're destroying years of work. My reputation's in the gutter because of you. I built this up from scratch. And the kicker, after everything I've done for you." I didn't respond. I just listened, deleted, and poured myself another cup of coffee. That night, my mom came by again, knocked like she lived there, then started yelling through the door that I was tearing the family apart. When I finally opened it, she was already crying, said I was letting Dad's legacy fall apart. I told her calmly that I wasn't letting anything happen. They were. She didn't take that well. Said I was acting like a stranger, said I used to be her sweet boy. I told her maybe she never really knew me. She slapped my arm, not hard, but enough to get the message across, then turned and left like a soap opera character storming off the set. Monday, I ran into Rita at the pharmacy, and she wouldn't even look at me. Later that day, my cousin texted me asking if I could just fix it for Grandma's sake. I replied, "I'm not part of the family, remember?" She didn't reply again. All this time, Roy's bait shop has been dead in the water. No system access, no invoices sent, no replies to customers, and the account password recovery is locked behind the number he lost when I dropped the plan. Every move I made to untangle myself from this machine turn out to be a support beam they didn't realize they needed until it was gone. They could have learned to do any of this at any point, could have asked me to show them how, could have thanked me. But they didn't. They just assumed I'd always be there, like a utility they never paid for. Now that I'm not, the entire structure is shaking, and they're all looking around wondering who let it happen. But it wasn't me. I didn't tear anything down. I just stopped holding it up. By the time Tuesday rolled around, I figured things would settle into the background like they always did. Some distant family drama simmering quietly until the next crisis came along to distract everyone from dealing with the last one. But instead, the pressure kept building, and I didn't even have to do anything. They were crumbling all on their own without me lifting a finger, and honestly, it was the most peaceful chaos I'd ever witnessed from a distance. That morning started with the usual missed calls, mostly from Clay and Mom, but this time there were texts from Rita again. She said the kids were confused, that they didn't understand why Uncle Dylan wasn't answering. It hurt for a second. Tommy's just a kid, but I knew better than to open that door. They'd dangle the kids like bait every time they needed to pull me back into the loop. I told her gently but firmly that I wasn't coming back until someone actually acknowledged what they'd done. She didn't reply after that. Later that afternoon, I got a voicemail from Mom trying out a new approach. She was calmer this time, less dramatic, using that soft voice she always used when she wanted something fixed but didn't want to admit she couldn't do it herself. She said Roy was barely eating, that the shop had been dark for days, that Clay was having trouble with his bank card because one of the automatic business account verifications had failed. She even said Grandma was asking why I hadn't been around lately, and that she was worried something had happened to me. I didn't respond. I didn't even listen to the end of the message. I deleted it and moved on with my day like it was any other Tuesday. Vacuumed the hallway again. Cleaned the grout in the bathroom just to have something to focus on. I was done explaining myself to people who only noticed my absence when things stopped working. They'd had years to pay attention and never did. And now that the machine had stopped running, they were finally realizing it was never automatic. Wednesday was when things started turning more desperate. I got a text from a family friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in at least 4 years, saying that Roy had been at the pub talking about me, telling anyone who would listen that I'd sabotaged the shop and was acting like a spoiled brat because I wasn't invited to one little trip. She said he looked wrecked, that he'd been on his third beer by noon, and that she thought maybe I should talk to him before things got worse. I told her kindly but clearly that I wasn't responsible for how he reacted to consequences he brought on himself. By Thursday morning, the desperation had turned theatrical. Mom came back to my place again, and this time she was already crying before I even opened the door. She stood there in sunglasses, holding a paper bag like she'd just come from a market, and when I stepped outside, she didn't even ask to come in. She just stood there and said, "Are you really going to let this family fall apart?" I said, "I didn't start this." She said, "Your father can't even look at your brother." Apparently, Clay had lost it earlier in the week and smashed his phone after finding out some critical business form hadn't been submitted because Roy couldn't get into the email account. Mom kept talking, said Grandma was calling every morning, asking what she did wrong, that Roy wasn't sleeping, and that Rita was talking about taking the kids and staying with her sister for a while. "Just come back and help for one day," she pleaded. "I'll make sure your father apologizes." I told her flatly, "There's nothing I want from him anymore." She looked like she didn't know what to say, just stood there holding the bag like it was going to keep her grounded. Then she said, "You're being cold, Dylan. This isn't you." I shrugged and said, "Maybe you never really knew me." She turned, said nothing else, and slammed the building's glass door hard enough to make it echo down the hall. Not 5 minutes later, I started getting texts again, this time from Clay, 11 messages in a row, bouncing between rage and panic. "You ruined everything. Dad says the shop is dead. Rita's packing a bag. The kids are crying. If you don't fix this, don't bother coming back." I read them all once, then deleted the thread entirely. I wasn't about to get pulled back into the guilt trap they'd been sharpening for years. Friday morning, I saw Roy at the bank while I was depositing a check. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, sunken eyes, shoulders hunched, shirt buttoned wrong like he'd dressed in the dark. He saw me across the lobby and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but instead he just stared, shook his head, and walked out. I didn't follow, didn't speak, just finished my deposit and left. I spent the rest of that day cleaning my apartment and watching dumb online videos while messages kept piling up on my phone. I didn't open any of them. I just watched the previews roll in, one after another, like notifications from a burning building that I wasn't responsible for putting out. By Saturday night, Rita sent one final message. "I don't care what happened," she wrote, "but the kids are scared and Caleb won't talk to anyone. Your dad just sits in the living room staring at nothing." I stared at that message for a while, longer than I'd looked at any of the others. Not because I felt guilty, but because I realized they still didn't understand. I've been sitting in that same kind of silence for years, doing all the work no one saw and getting none of the credit, and now that they were living it too, they still thought I was the problem. Sunday morning, I made coffee, checked the group chat one last time just to confirm it was still burning, and smiled when I saw that it was. Roy hadn't said a word since Thursday. Clay was still alternating between threats and pleas. Mom had gone silent except for one last message that just said, "Please talk to us. We need you." I didn't reply. I just drank my coffee and opened the window. The air was cool for once. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. By the time this last week rolled around, I had no real interest in checking in on anyone or finding out whether they'd figure out how to rewire the mess they made. I wasn't bitter anymore, not really. Just done. I kept my phone on silent, walked to the store when I felt like it, and let the hours pass without thinking about anyone else's login problems or overdue invoices. It was the quietest my life had ever been, and weirdly, didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something had finally stopped dragging behind me. Tuesday morning, I woke up early to the sound of knocking again. Not angry this time, just desperate, small, repeated thuds like someone didn't want to make a scene but couldn't help showing up anyway. I ignored it until the doorbell started going off like it was stuck, and when I finally checked the peephole, I saw Clay's car parked sideways outside like he'd pulled in without thinking. I waited until he gave up and drove off, and then I checked my phone to find 11 new messages, all from him, starting with "pickup" and ending with "you broke this family." I didn't reply to any of them. That afternoon, I went down to grab my mail, and there was Mom sitting on the lobby bench like she had nowhere else to go. She had the sunglasses on again, the same ones she wears to church or funerals, the kind that hide everything but can't make you look put together when you're clearly unraveling. She didn't ask to come in this time. She just looked at me and said, "He's not eating, he's barely talking, and now Rita says she's taking the boys and going to her sister's." I nodded slowly, let the silence sit for a second before I said, "Then maybe you should think about how he got here." She looked tired, not fake tired like the sighs she used to throw at me when I didn't answer her fast enough, but real tired, the kind that sits in your bones. She asked, "Are you really going to let this break us?" And I told her, "You already did that when you stood next to him and didn't say a thing." She reached out, maybe to grab my arm, or maybe just to stop me from walking away, but I pulled back and told her, "There's nothing left to fix." Then I turned around and went back upstairs, left her sitting there like a stranger waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. Thursday, I ran into Roy again at the gas station. He looked thinner, pale, like the fight had drained out of him completely. He didn't try to speak this time, just gave me a long stare, something between regret and resentment, like he knew what he'd lost but couldn't admit it out loud. He got back in his truck and drove off before I even paid for my coffee. I didn't feel anything when I watched him leave. Not hate, not victory, just distance. By Saturday night, I got one more message from Rita, this one short and less charged than the others. "The boys are asking why Uncle Dylan's gone. Caleb doesn't answer anymore." I stared at it for a while, thinking about how many years I spent trying to be part of something that never saw me until I disappeared. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't keep giving myself to people who only noticed the gap I left, not the work I put in to fill it. I've been sitting in the quiet for days now, And it's the first time that silence hasn't felt like punishment. It's peace. It's mine. They can keep waiting for me to come fix it all again, but I won't. I'm not angry anymore. I just know better.